I'm a higher ed social media manager, and I have a confession. Rochelle Reed is the social media manager at James Madison University, and she is absolutely blowing my mind with how strategic she is with Instagram stories. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. I'm Jenny Li Fowler, award-winning social media professional, author, and podcast host, and a recognized voice across the social media marketing industry. Social media managers are navigating the wild, ever-changing world of higher ed communications, and I'm here to share the real stories and lessons behind the posts. Each episode explores the challenges, strategies, and untold moments that come with running social media accounts in today's digital landscape. Let's get into it. Rochelle, welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us how you got into social media management.
Mine is like many other stories getting into social media management, very roundabout. When I graduated, social media had just opened up to everybody. So Facebook had just kind of opened up to those without a college email. Instagram just beginning. X was still Twitter that you could text message your post to have it appear. So I wasn't really thinking about social media as a career when I graduated. I also graduated with a theater degree, so kind of limited career options, in that space. But I started working at Radio Disney AM 1290 in Richmond, Virginia. And that was my first introduction to working for a brand, especially a brand as big as Disney. You hear Disney, everybody probably has a memory or a feeling that they instantly think of. And to represent that through working with corporate partners in the area, facilitating events, working with families to bring that experience really helped me kind of learn how to represent a brand. At the same time, my mom had her own accounting firm and was looking at different marketing strategies. And I was like, Mom, I think you should be on social media. Like, I think your company should have a Facebook page. Like, you have a website. But why don't you meet your customers where they are? Like, provide information for them, remind them about tax season deadlines. So I started doing her social media. Other businesses in the area kind of was like, hey, I want to learn how to do this. So I started doing presentations for the Chamber of Commerce, got me in, to some rooms, transitioned into nonprofit marketing, doing the jack of all trades, with events, emails, websites. And it really wasn't until I switched over to higher ed, and I got into higher ed through my nonprofit experience because I had worked with boards. They were looking for somebody at Lehigh University in communications who could, work with board members, but also do communications. So I got in the door that way, and somebody in my office was like, has anybody ever heard of Snapchat? And I was like, I use Snapchat. I think Lehigh should be on Snapchat. Next thing I know, I'm launching Lehigh Snapchat, getting a little bit more specialized with social media, having some ownership. But it wasn't until I returned to JMU, I am a JMU alum, in 2021 that I got my first full-time social media job as the social media manager.
Wow, I love that story. So does Lehigh still have are they still active in Snapchat?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Is there possible? When I left, they were, and I had started their admissions TikTok, which I believe is still going. They had since started a TikTok. They're under different, rules than we are here in Virginia. But I took a lot that I learned from them and applied it to JMU.
Today, we're actually going to talk about Instagram stories. And I would like to know, what made you realize you had an opportunity to do more with Instagram stories?
Yes, I think Instagram stories are so underrated. I think people think that just because it's up for 24 hours, it's not a viable distribution source. And I see it as a way to be able to provide that real time, what is happening on campus, what is urgent for everybody to know through stories. It also takes a lot of pressure off because when you look at stories as a user, you see videos, you see photos, you see graphics, you see opportunities for interaction. You can kind of experiment and play. So when I was at Lehigh, that's when I started using stories more for takeovers, but then to also show research that was happening at the university, kind of taking the content that was already being made for the different publications, for the website, and finding a new life for it through stories and being like, just because it's up for 24 hours doesn't mean that it's not worth putting effort into. We were also tracking the data there, looking at the analytics, the very few analytics at the time. It's since grown, but we were tracking that. We were tracking click-through rates. We had like custom links created for our Instagram stories so we could see who was tapping their journeys on the website. They were very into it. And so I brought that when I came to JMU, being like, JMU is also using stories in a very similar way, but how can we take that to the next level? What experiences, what stories can we be telling through Instagram stories that we're not sharing like on a feed post? Because there's different criteria for a feed post versus a website article, email.
Sure.
Stories is a little bit more forgiving with the content you can, use there.
I love that instead of dismissing stories as something that is not permanent, you're using the 24-hour sort of limitation as an asset. I love that thinking. Tell me some of the changes you made to JMU's presence.
Yeah. So first thing we did was started tracking our stories and the analytics. And now we have 4 years worth of Instagram story data that we can look back on.
What are you tracking?
So we have a spreadsheet where we track, we go by month, the date, we have the story theme. So we have was it a takeover for the Student Government Association? Was this just a feed post share? We get pretty detailed. We've changed what we've tracked. We've actually simplified it. So right now we're just currently tracking first frame impressions and last frame impressions, so that way we can get our retention rate. We're tracking interactions, and then we break that down by link shares, if it was a takeover, sticker taps, poll interactions, and then that's how we get that number, and then the number of frames or how long was the story. We used to go a little bit deeper into that, but we found that data was a little arduous to pull every, month. It's a nice, also a weekly task that my interns can do where they can go in, pull the data. I do it when they're not there, and I'm always grateful for them. And then we also look at our average retention rate. So when we set our social media strategy, we actually incorporate our Instagram stories into that strategy. So we have social media goals specifically for Instagram stories that what we're tracking helps know if we're going to reach that or not. So that was the first step, was just tracking and seeing what was working, what wasn't.
Can you give us a look into what was working? What did you find was working?
Yeah, we learned that the JMU community loves to share their opinions. So they love opportunities for interactions. I'm sure that's common, but we weren't really giving them a lot of opportunities to interact through stories. So we were when we put up a slider, even if it's just a get ready, it's game day, and we have a little football emoji, we're how excited are you? And it's a slider where they can indicate how excited they are. People will interact with that. Polls, the Q&A box is always great, but even just directing people to other accounts through a sticker, they will tap on that sticker. We tell students when they do takeovers with us, we're listen, if you put your account out there, people are going to tap over, and we have the data to prove it. So that was the big thing, was just opening up interactions. We also changed our event coverage to make it more, if we were seeing this for the first time, what would somebody want to see? We can't just assume that everybody knows what Quad Fest is at homecoming, or even our weeks of welcome. Every college campus has a move-in, but what makes JMU's move-in special? What access do we have that not everybody else has? And then also opening up our collaborations on stories. We do takeovers with offices and students, but we do consultations with every single person where we go over best practices, what we see works, what examples from previous takeovers that we have found to be engaging. And we really encourage people to just really be creative, to try, failure. We're not afraid of that with the stories. And I think having that strategy, and it changes every year as we are looking at our stories. We're also very nimble. We're like, if this didn't work 2 years in a row, we either need to cut it or we need to reevaluate.
Oh, I agree.
We're shifting, so we also became less precious about the story space.
That's a really good lesson for us to all learn. So you have data on individual features like a slider or a poll or
Yes.
I am so impressed. Okay, so when you said best practices, can you share some best practices that you're finding for stories?
Yeah, so we always...
I know you talked about the interaction, but
in addition to that, just introducing yourself to the JMU community when people are we always have a strong intro because when you're watching stories, sometimes you don't know whose story you're watching. If you're clicking through your story feed.
True. Yeah.
So we're like, make it clear from the beginning. Usually we find that we look at the tap back and the exit rates for stories, and usually people will swipe out within the first 2 frames we have found. So we're like, make it very clear from the beginning what people can expect to see from you today. Lots of opportunities for interaction, but also keep it short. You think about the dashes that you see when you open up somebody's story.
Yeah.
You don't want there to be a lot.
Right. It's if there's too many, I think that's the first thing I look at. And if there are too many, I think I tap out, which actually which leads me to the question I was wanting to ask you is like, are you ever worried about like story fatigue? Like, what is your audience retention? What's the sweet spot?
Yeah, we are definitely concerned about that. We have also fallen victim to it. So we have definitely given our community story fatigue, and we have seen that, and then we course corrected with that. So we definitely have a retention rate, an average retention rate in mind that we are trying to reach each month, but then also for the fiscal year. So that helps keep us in check as well. So
wow,
yeah.
You have a targeted retention rate for your Instagram stories.
We do.
You are really blowing my mind. Would you share that, or you don't have to if you don't?
Yeah, so I can say for us, on average, where we are right now with this like academic year, if we're above an 87% average retention rate for the month, we're happy.
Oh, for the month.
Yeah.
Okay, so not per story, or do you?
Yeah, because per story can vary because sometimes we're only posting 1 frame, and that's the only thing we're posting that day. So that's obviously going to be 100% retention rate.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We do look at those discrepancies, and then if we can get like around 90% average for the fiscal year, like we're happy. We're like, okay.
87% is I keep on using the word impressive, but that is the word that is coming to mind. Wait, 87% feels really high. That's high, isn't it? Do you know what industry averages? Like, I actually don't. So I'm just
I do not, but I know that's a growth area for us. So last year, because we have that data, we can look back year over year. We were not at that. We were like at like mid 70. So this is also like us growing.
Wow.
So that's what I was like, this year, based off of where we are, we're like, okay, this seems to be our sweet spot. We're kind of happy with that. If we go like a couple points below it, that's okay. But like if we, we kind of we benchmark against ourselves. And then we are also looking at the impressions, the first frame views to kind of be like, how many people are we reaching? And for us, on average, it's about 10% of our followers we're reaching within that first frame.
Okay.
If something is really engaging, we'll get up to like 20-30%.
Let's take a quick pause for a word from our sponsor. Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 33 to 35% email open rates. The impact? Personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours and not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents.
What's like how many frames per story? Does that Yeah.
So we try, and sometimes we'll post multiple.
Good average, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we'll post multiple story themes in a day. Like sometimes it's UGC and then it'll be like a takeover. Well, those are two completely different things. So we try to think of, again, if you open up JMU's Instagram story, how many bars are you going to see?
Yeah.
We don't want you to see more than like 10 to 12.
Okay, that makes sense. But wow. So you said you benchmark against yourself, but I think that makes a lot of sense because I don't even know, honestly, if there is a higher ed benchmark for story retention. Or maybe
I don't know. Yeah, I think the API with stories is, a little harder to get. So,
but also I just anecdotally, I haven't had this conversation with a lot of people. Like people talk about follower count or average engagement, but no one's ever asked me like, what is your Instagram story retention rate? But I think now I feel like I should know. You know what I mean? Now I need to look into that because that is an area that you can grow for sure.
Yeah. And I love our Instagram story data spreadsheet. Full transparency, I took that with me from Lehigh. I just copy pasted it. So, love that. But the fact that, again, that we have 4 years worth of data that we can look back on, we can see the low points where we're like, okay, November, December, we always see a drop off in views and in retention.
Because of the holidays?
Holidays, breaks. Students just aren't looking at our accounts when they're not here.
Okay.
I'm not offended.
Okay.
But then we know, okay, what can we do to combat that? Or is this really the time to post something? We know for us, stuff that's posted on Fridays doesn't seem to do well. So if somebody wants to post something on a Friday, we're kind of like, that's not going to be the best performance day for our stories.
Or maybe the things that you have to post that you don't.
There is the Friday dump. Yeah.
That's real okay, we'll put that on a Friday.
And it was for a reason.
That's really funny. But I love that you see that up as an opportunity. There's an opportunity here. So what can we post to, what kind of content can we post to, have a higher percentage rate? Is Instagram stories your primary sort of feature?
It's up there. I mean, feed and reels definitely is a priority. But the Instagram stories, I would say, is right up there with reels.
Okay. So it's not secondary. It's not like this, we don't know what to do with it. So, we'll throw whatever. Wow.
It has its own section of our content calendar. It has we put our stories, whether it's a takeover, whether it's a collaboration, whether it's a design story that we're doing, whether it's a share of something. We treat that space as almost prime realty as well.
As we should be, right? It shouldn't, any feature, it shouldn't be a throwaway feature. We should be maximizing every option that we have, which is why I love what you're doing with stories so much. I mean, it did catch my attention because it's so exceptional. So I'm really so happy that you're kind of sharing your experience with us. But I know you talked about your results. We know a little bit. You talked about your retention rate. It sounds like you're experiencing a lot of success with it.
We are, and it's like I said, it's trial and error with a lot of changes.
Okay.
With that, one thing that really opened our eyes to just how successful stories could be was when College Game Day came to our campus in 2023. And is that
the sports deal? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And it was my first time having college game day on campus. It was their third time coming to JMU.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of content that can be created
Oh, a ton.
around that.
Yeah.
And so it was like, how can we utilize stories? How can we make that a special space where like this is almost exclusive content that you're only going to see on our stories? And that opened it up to user-generated content and UGC, and relying on the JMU community when they see the trucks rolling onto the quad or when they're seeing stuff, they're taking pictures, they're uploading it to their story, they're tagging JMU, and we would just share it to ours because we can't be everywhere at once.
Oh, yes. I heard that. And UGC is it's such an asset. I wish more higher ed, channels were using it because it's so helpful and takes you to the places where you're not, right? So
exactly.
How were you selective? Because, sometimes when there's an event, it can get pretty repetitive. Like you're kind of looking at the same thing that people are posting. So how were you selecting what would make it to, JMU's stories?
Yeah, we had an idea of what we were going to post ourselves, like what was the content that we were going to be capturing. And we also don't post the UGC immediately once it comes in. If we see like there's this moment that people might be capturing a lot of, we'll kind of wait to see what comes in and then select the best of the best from there. There's also a couple JMU community members that I've seen their name enough in my DMs that I know they're going to have good UGC and that they're like a trusted source to put in there. We were also experiencing something that I think a lot of universities experience where people were starting to tag us less in their feed posts, but more in their stories. So again, they're taking advantage of it's only up for 24 hours. So I'm more likely to tag my university. So we took full advantage of that and kind of used college game day as a way to thank our community for showing up for us. I mean, like, okay, we're going to post your UGC. We saw fantastic results in the data from having a mix of our content that was a little bit more professional. We had the consistent branding, the consistent font, and then mixed with UGC. And just leaving space for that, we saw immense results. So now it's part of our strategy where we want so many UGC stories a month to be able, and we see the numbers, like they do very well with views, with interactions, and with retention.
I have so many questions. Okay, so when you're saying we're getting really good results, is it the interactions?
It's everything. It's like we're getting more views because it's not something by us. They see somebody else's name at the top, especially now that you can make it full screen before. So like sharing people's UGC, we saw more impressions, so more of those first frame views, more of a retention rate. Like the retention rate would be very high, like almost in the 90s for the story, even if there was multiple frames of UGC. And then interactions, though I will clarify, some of those interactions were coming from, people tapping over to the other person's profile to see like who posted this. But hey, we'll take the interaction.
That's still an interaction because I think they were interested enough to look for more information, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really telling. And you also said that people DM you. You see names or,
Yes.
What are they DMing you about? Just use my content or what?
Well, the lovely thing about DMs now is like story mentions come through as DMs.
They do. That's right. Okay. Yeah.
And that's great for me because I can just, if I miss the notification, I can go over into the DMs. I can see that it's a story mention, look at it. And even if we don't use their content, sometimes I'll still reply to them as like, that's a beautiful photo. We love this so much. Thank you for sharing. Other times that UGC has become a feed post for us where we've DM'd them and said, we love this. Can you share this with us so we can post it on Threads or Instagram and let us know how you would like to be credited?
And so upon doing all of this, have you seen a lot of growth within your followers, like just your follower count?
We've seen steady growth. I mean, there are, of course, are periods where there's high growth with, admissions. When everybody gets in, you usually see all the lurkers convert into they're now actually following you because they were accepted. or during like the first few weeks of the first semester, they're following. But we have seen steady growth, especially like you can see who's followed you like from stories or who have liked your stories. And we'll see a couple come in.
Okay.
We don't track it
Okay.
in our spreadsheet, but anecdotally, like we can go in and we're like, oh, we didn't think you'd follow us from that, but thank you for the follow.
Oh, so you can see specifically, and it probably informs your future content when you see people following you from certain stories, right?
Yes. And we can also see when they visit our profile, like how many profile visits we got on by story frame. So sometimes too, we'll be like, oh, that's an interesting, thing to note. Let's see if we continue trending in this way. Or what about that piece of content made them take that action?
Right. Oh, gosh. Rochelle, I mean, I love my data. Like, I am looking at my data all the time, but you're starting to make me feel like I'm underutilizing my data.
I give you another thing to track.
I mean, no, but learn from. Like, just listening to you is sort of broadening my view of data for stories, and I'm here for it. I'm really here for it.
I love that. I think there are a lot of fun surprises and opportunities that are hiding within Instagram story data that I'm excited for other people to tap into and really, take their stories to the next level.
I mean, absolutely. And so is there something that we haven't mentioned or some other sort of like tips you can offer us that haven't come up yet, or anything you would want me to ask you?
I would say, like, with Instagram stories, also feel free to give it to other people in your community. Like I said, we allow others to do takeovers. We don't actually let them log into the account, but we do give that story space more so than we do our feed. So while we get a lot of collaboration requests, with varying degrees of quality of content, some we're expecting, some we're not, we're a little bit more precious with the feed. But for the stories, we really do reach out to campus partners and be like, academic advising, would you be interested in taking over our stories to share your advising tips for the upcoming like class registration? Or, the career center, you have a career fair coming up. Would you like to do something? So we have a request form that people can submit, including students and student groups, that they can, let us know, like, hey, we want to kind of like take over JMU's Instagram stories for a day. We have a process for vetting them. Like I said, they meet with us. It's a 30-minute consultation that they have to do where we go over sort of our expectations, answer any questions that they have, and then they submit their content to us, which I thought was going to be a very arduous process. It is actually not at all for our team. We are a Microsoft campus, so Microsoft booking page is great for booking those consultations. We just send them a link, they book it. But we have found that we've been able to share a lot more about the JMU experience by opening up our stories to other voices than just university communications than if we were to do it ourselves. Like I could, reach out and be like, I'm going to do a design story about advising tips, but how much cooler is it to have it come from students that are working in the advising office or from the advisors themselves?
It's always great when they can tell the story themselves, right? But
yeah.
But I think you said that you don't actually give them the key, like they don't actually have access to your account. So how does that work?
Yeah, so we used to do that. And then Instagram didn't like it, thought it was a security risk, and we were like, valid, fair. So they submit through our form and they request a date. We look at our content calendar again because stories have their space in our content calendar. We identify, yep, we can do it on this day. We reply back to them, let them know this is your takeover date. We also don't give over account access. You would have to submit your content to us. We have up to 2 business days in advance of their takeover date. So we also have time to review, to upload it into Instagram, to make sure their content's in the safe zones, to make sure that there's space.
So they are giving you like vertical, like the images or any
And
of
the
that.
videos already captioned. Yep, all of that.
And you're doing the actual posting.
Yes. And
Oh,
so we're reviewing too to make sure that we're checking for spelling.
yeah, that's
We're checking for all of that.
so good.
And so we share a OneDrive folder with them because, again, Microsoft Campus, they upload it. We also have an outline form that's blank that they can fill in because interactions, if they try to save it, it's not going to be tappable. So we'll say if you want us to add an interaction, note that here. If you want us to add a link, note that here. If you would like us to share a feed post from your Instagram profile, note that here. And that's what we follow.
And
when
so
we are posting.
And you're finding that your community knows enough about how to use stories that they're giving you the right information, or do they, or in the consultation, do you kind of tell them what to expect and what you need and things like that?
Yes, that's all covered in the consultation. And we'll ask them, do you know how to do this?
Okay.
Are you familiar with this feature? Because we have found students, as much as they love to be on social media, sometimes aren't as familiar as or doing social media for a brand or for a business.
It's different.
So we go over, no, you can't, add that sound because we're a business and music licensing, or no solicitation of funds, on the JMU Instagram story.
Yes.
So we do have those that we go over with them, but then we also review their content once it's submitted. And if we have any recommendations or feedback, we have the time to be able to give that to them to allow them to either take that and, resubmit it, or we're like, this is our feedback. This is, your voice and your story. But we find for performance, we recommend these changes, but it's up to you if you want to do that. And then we also share that data with them after their takeover. So they get to know their results as well.
That's big to share. I think that's a huge relationship building step and is really important. Well, you really have opened my eyes to stories, and I'm seeing them in an entirely new light.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, for sure. I have one more question for you, Rochelle. That is, what is your confession?
My confession is that caring less about my job actually made me better at it. And I'll let that sit because there's probably some people who are furiously typing an email right now to my boss at JMU.
No. I think I know where you're going with this, but please explain. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us, we care so deeply about the mission of our universities or our college campuses. We care so deeply about the work that we put out, about the students and the communities that we are affecting, that it can sometimes get in the way of what we're doing. And it doesn't make us as flexible. It doesn't make us as open to new ideas. Also, just personal boundaries, with knowing when to step away. And I still care. I realize that my caring less is still probably somebody else's caring very, very much. But there are times where I will stop myself and I'll be like, nobody else cares about this as much as I do. And maybe I should take a lesson from that and take a step back and be more open to the ideas that are coming to me. There are definitely some stuff with stories where if I cared very, very deeply about the stories, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. When we're posting, 20 stories a month that have 8 to 10 frames, that's a lot of pieces of content that's going up.
Yeah.
And that's just on stories. That's not including all of our other platforms. So being less precious and caring a little bit less has really made me better at my job and made me just a better social media manager.
I think I would argue you care very much. So maybe, but I think you said it. It's having it be less precious, not being so married or hardened, right, to whatever it is.
And also being we have to have a process before we do this. I know that's a very higher ed thing. What's the procedure? What's the process? We need to have this in place before we do UGC. We need to have a plan. Just post it.
Yeah. There you go.
That's my thing. Just post it.
I love it. I've learned a lot. And, honestly, thank you for sharing your wisdom about Instagram stories with us.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.